Hello. Welcome back to another episode of F1 Manager 2024 Mercedes F1 Team Rebuild. We will quickly jump into the race weekend. There's not much to report. We are basically at the end of the season, and I am quite comfortable that we will finish third. Now, last episode, McLaren closed their gap to Aston Martin. Will McLaren continue performing up to those standards? If so, we will be in trouble, but we will try our best to maybe win this race. We'll see how that goes. I doubt it though. But let's jump into it and not waste any more of our time.
It's lights out and away we go.
Lights out and away we go. We are starting 5th and 12th for George Russell. We drop down to 6th in the first corner. Leclerc passes us. We had a decent qualifying session. I managed to get George Russell to 100% car setup. So basically the optimal level. Qualifying was decent. I used Lewis to qualify George 4th, but then he had to drop down due to us receiving a grid penalty. But here in Singapore, we just need to get points to continue increasing our lead to Aston Martin. McLaren seem to have upgraded their car. Now they are competitive in the top 4. We will see how that goes. Hopefully we can stay behind the two McLarens and battle Leclerc that's right now next to Lewis. Should be a fun one. Hopefully we will get 2 races done today. I will do my best to keep this short. And so Checo finally overtakes Lewis in lap 5. This was coming. Obviously this is a hard track to overtake cars in. George will have to do his best to climb up the ranks to at least catch up to Lewis. But we will try to stay in 7th. Lewis has heavily dropped off of Oscar Piastri. And so Danny Rick overtakes George. Not for long, we have the ERS. Then we will pass Danny Rick again, although he has the inside. Now George has the inside, but still Danny Rick stays in front. We will be battling the Racing Bulls today by the looks of it. We're not in the greatest of positions right now. Lewis doing his best to keep next or stay behind Checo. We just need to keep that DRS interval so we can use Checo as much as we can. But George is struggling in Singapore. So, rain is coming in. We will box for the inters. We stayed out for 1 lap, maybe for too long. We will push this lap, try to gain an advantage while on the softs. We will see how that goes. Might have been the wrong choice, but we will see. And so, all of the top 5 cars are pitting. Max is catching up. Let's see. Can we gain a position by we're pitting 1 lap later? Lewis has a quick stop. 2.4, our quickest yet. George pitting.
So you'll be all clear on exit.
2.9. Well, not the best for George, but Lewis might have made up a position.
Exit.
And he will not, but at least we will have a fresher tire than Checo, and hopefully we will be able to stay behind Checo a bit
Just
easier than
a little more.
earlier. Oh my god.
That was strange. Big rear lock.
Just as I come in and we're checking on
There's
George,
a yellow flag now.
he crashes.
Is George Russell involved? Dangerously close to each other. Oh, and the cars there, unable to keep out of each other's way. A bitter blow, too, for more than one driver from the pack.
And so, George and Danny Rick are out of the race. For the 2nd time in a row, George will not finish a race.
VSC.
The VSC is out.
So keep the delta
We
positive.
will not pit. Let's see, yeah, we won't pit. We will just stay out. That is
We've
really
had a big
unfortunate. And so, Logan Sargent collided with Alonso, I believe. The track is drying up, so we will pit for mediums soon enough. This has given us a chance to push and close the gap on Checo Perez. Actually, it was Stroll that Sargent collided with. So, hopefully they will fall out of the top 10, maybe giving Alpine a chance. And you don't want Aston Martin getting any extra points from us. But it will be interesting to see what Lewis can do. We are battling for 7th. And with George being out, we just need to maximize the points that we can get out of this race. And so we will pit for the 2nd time this race. The rest of the cars have pitted as well, so we will do so as well. Hopefully this is our last pit. We'll see how much we can conserve our tires. But did Red Bull double stack and slow down Checo? I don't believe so. The Max is already on the other part of the track, almost on the other side of the track, I mean. But Lewis gets a 2.7. We're out. Oscar Piastri has a pit stop issue, so we're now in 6th. Let's try to do our best to keep this position and keep Oscar behind. And so, Lewis finishes 6th. This was the quickest race for me. Only 28 minutes, an uneventful race. We made a gamble, and we were on the mediums after we switched from the intermediates. The rest of the cars went hards and softs.
And it's lights out, and away we go.
Lights out, away we go. Accidentally pressed on ×2 speed. We had new parts come in for basically the whole car. And let's hope for a good result here. We still aren't on the same level as McLaren. And we are a bit better than Aston Martin though. So let's try to get the 6th and 7th at least. Let's see. Piastri's 10th. I was about to say, why aren't we 7th and 8th? But luckily Piastri didn't qualify as high. Now multiple cars will get grid penalties for the actual race, but we do have a fighting chance here at the sprint race. We'll see how it goes. Singapore was a quick race. Let's hope for a quick race here in Austin. But I would like to get a couple of points out of this race weekend. We just need to finish in the top 8.
Push and hold, overtake.
George will be going for the overtake on Carlos Sainz, and he successfully does overtake him.
Use the overtake.
We conserved our tires during the start of the race. I left it on aggressive for the start of the race, and we have a slight advantage tire-wise, percentage-wise. I might be using the word wise a bit too much, but we will be able to now battle with Leclerc and Norris with George. Lewis closing in quickly on Carlos. There is a nice DRS train here, so there is a possibility for us to reach P3 today. And so George in the inside overtakes Leclerc, now going for the overtake on Norris soon enough, hopefully. I would like to maybe push with our fuel a bit, but I don't believe that will be the case. Leclerc is still wheel-to-wheel battling with George. We still haven't successfully overtaken him, and Leclerc now takes back the position. Hopefully have the straight line speed to pass the Ferrari. Could we possibly go on deploy? So we will. Lewis actually passed Carlos now behind Leclerc. And we'll put George on deploy. Hopefully he can overtake Lando. We will drop down to... Yes, he does. So George overtakes Norris now in P3. Trying to close the gap to the Red Bulls up front. They are 3 seconds in front of George. We seem to be pretty quick. Now Lewis behind Leclerc and Norris. Sainz dropped off quite heavily. Second behind Lewis now. What has happened with the Ferraris? I don't know. Are our new upgrades this powerful? I do not know. Now we were deploying quite heavily, so our battery levels are drained, but let's hope that this will not ruin our race, and hopefully we'll be able to keep our position. Now George has a nice gap to Lando, but Lewis almost was able to overtake Leclerc. Now he has the DRS. But that overtake was quite risky, now falling off. Norris overtakes George. So many things happening at once. Our tire levels have dropped off now. Checo at 60%, he might drop off as well. Hopefully we'll be able to finish on the podium today. I don't want to jinx anything though. Let's try to keep Carlos behind Lewis and try to overtake Leclerc, while George has to just overtake Lando. Ooh, this will be a tough one. Might have to... I don't know if I want to deploy right now. We will have a long DRS straight in front of us. I might want to deploy after this straight. Carlos hopefully didn't get the DRS, so we'll be able to fly away from him, increasing the gap. Lewis just has to close the gap on Leclerc, and George does overtake Lando, although he has the inside. Now George has the inside, and he does overtake Lando. Good job. So we will try to now just keep Lando behind. George overtook Lando once again. I was watching the battle unfold in ×2 to speed up the race, but hopefully he'll be able to keep the lead. Lando has the inside. George now has the inside. He does now end up in third. Now, unfortunately, Lando will have the DRS, but it is what it is. But Carlos has closed in on Lewis, and Lewis dropping off from Leclerc quite quickly. Now, my concern is Leclerc is conserving his tire while not battling anyone. Maybe that is a smart decision. Both of the Ferraris seemingly have a better tire than their competition at this time. But, yeah, Lewis is dropping off. I am afraid that Carlos will pass him, but let's hope George can beat Lando and Leclerc up front. George now able to overtake Lando one lap later. I did tell him to deploy out of that corner before the DRS straight. Now he will keep the third position, but again, 7 laps to go, so nothing is guaranteed at this time. Lewis, meanwhile, still trying to pass Leclerc while Carlos is stalking him from behind. Tire level wise, still not in a great position, although Lando is dropping off. I will leave both of the drivers on standard, hopefully to passively conserve the tire a bit. Though Checo just pitted, so we will at least be on the podium with George for right now.
So we are low on battery at the moment.
Unfortunately, I waited until Lewis depletes his battery.
Coming up nicely.
Okay, so tire temperature is optimal now for George, although at 49%, while Leclerc has 58 and Lando 54. The advantage I had at the start of the race now seemingly has disappeared. We are now at a disadvantage, but Checo comes out at 9th with used softs. Will he be able to catch up back up to the top 3? I don't think so. So let's just try to keep these 2 positions, but we might have to conserve at some point. And so George has been passed by Leclerc at lap 16, and Lewis has completely lost the gap. Carlos now on his tail, battling Checo, quickly closing in. I might have pushed a bit too hard, although Sainz behind has the same amount of tire degradation behind. But Checo will be a problem in a couple of laps. Now, if I could battle with George a bit for the 3rd position, that'd be great. Let's see what is the interval like. It is a second. I might have to just deploy it. Although he did get the DRS, and he might have
Push and hold, overtake.
a bit of fuel he could use. Let's see how that goes. It will be tough though. Checo has closed the gap to Lewis. He does have the soft, so it kinda is inevitable that he will pass him. And meanwhile, George is losing some time to Lando, and Carlos quickly closing in. I'm quite confident we'll be able to keep the 4th position with George, but for Lewis, he might drop down to 7th after Checo passes him. Hopefully we can steal some points from the Red Bull, but it doesn't look too hopeful for Lewis at this time. And so George overtakes Lando, and 1 lap left. Oh, Lando gets his position back. We have some extra fuel we could use. I tried to save up as much battery as you could while battling Lando, but Carlos now closing in. Lewis lost the position to Checo, so we will just maintain the 7th position, race until the end. I will conserve some fuel with him so he just makes it to the end of the race.
Just think about lifting
Don't want
post
to repeat
efficiency.
Austria, but now George will attempt an overtake on Lando. And I won't
just
deploy
starting the
right
final
now. And I will try to still keep the little bit of fuel we can for the end of the race. George will have the inside, so let's hope for an overtake here. Yeah. Okay, hold up. Give him a second. No, still no can do. Checo closing in on George. Let's not give up the position to Checo though. But we have one extra, or 0.1 extra kilograms of fuel. We will use it out of this corner. And we will go on mode attack to the end of the race. Now let's just hope for a nice
And happy to pick up the
overtake
level.
on
Okay.
Lando. By the looks of it, he does. Let's just secure the inside of the corner, and there he goes. Drop down to balanced again. Go up to balance with him.
Good job.
I'll leave him on deploy for right now.
P3.
Lewis battling with Carlos. We will push with him as well and also deploy. So
And think about
let's
lifting coast.
see. I want to check in on both drivers, but I need to watch closely Lewis's fuel levels. But
Don't sweat it, Lewis.
if Checo doesn't manage, okay, George got the 3rd position.
Checkered flag is
We're
out.
on the podium with George. Lewis finishes 7th. Oh, my hands up. My hands are up in the air. I'm happy with this one.
It's the United States Grand Prix. And it's lights out, and away we go.
Lights out, away we go. So George starts in 5th, while Lewis in 18th. He received 2 grid penalties. We changed out, I believe, the engine and the gearbox. So he starts out in 18th. 2 different strategies for both of the drivers. Lewis starts on the mediums, while George on the softs. We will try to stay as close to the Ferraris as we can. Hopefully this is a good race for us. We proved that we can finish on the podium during the sprint race. Hopefully we can do the same during the actual race. Okay, we have a nice gap to Oscar Piastri already. Let's try to keep that position while Ricardo
Pace is still good,
overtakes
let's keep it
Lewis,
up.
but he will... Oh my god. I was about to say he will keep that position, but Danny Rick decided to crash into him. Hopefully, Danny Rick gets a penalty for that. He really slowed us down. Luckily, we didn't get any kind of damage on our car. So, let's race on. And so, in lap 3, George overtakes Charles Leclerc. Momentarily, he gains back his position. So, Danny Rick did get a 5-second penalty. Lance Stroll locked up, now down in 20th. Both of our... George battling for the podium right now, while George is battling for the 18th position, or Lewis is battling for the 18th position. Now, out of that corner, Leclerc did pass George and fly away from George. George messed up a bit. Let's see, I unfortunately had to drop down out of deploy to conserve some batteries. You can see we're basically 1%. The minimum we can have. I will engage ERS Battle Assist to try to conserve a bit of the battery.
Available.
Copy.
But hopefully
Overtake
Carlos
is
doesn't
available.
get DRS from George, and we can at least increase the gap to the top, or from the 5th position. So George finally is in the battle with Charles again. Our tires have degraded quite heavily. Lando is in 1st, battling Max. Lando does have the softs though, but we are in a tough position tire-wise. I wanted to conserve as much as we could for a while, but unluckily we can't. And Carlos now closing in. He has the advantage tire-wise on George for right now on the mediums. But Lewis finally overtook Danny Rick. And hopefully he'll be able to race back up into the top 10. He will have a tough battle today to even get any kind of points out of today, but at least he'll have new parts for the rest of the season. And meanwhile, George, does he overtake? No, not yet. Still behind Charles, although battling wheel to wheel. We are quite close to the top 2, so if we're able to overtake Charles, we might be able to go on a run to try to catch up to those 2. Charles might be in DRS range. That would be only benefit us if Charles could pull us up even closer to the top 2. Let's see how that goes out of this corner. Meanwhile, Lewis is battling Guan Yu Zhou. I will tell him to deploy out of these couple of corners. George, meanwhile, gets the DRS. Charles has the DRS, so hopefully we'll extend the gap to Carlos, although Carlos might have DRS as well. And so, Lewis finally going for the overtake on Guan Yu Zhou. Although Guan Yu Zhou is heavily defending against Lewis. Lewis will not be able to overtake Guan Yu Zhou. Both of these Saubers holding us back. Danny Rick has now closed in on Lewis. I forgot to drop down to neutral with Lewis again from deploy to neutral. George Russell, meanwhile, has dropped off from Charles. Carlos Sainz will pass him. But at least we have an 11-second gap to Albon. So let's try to hold the 5th position for as long as we can. And so George is coming into the pits, following in behind Lando Norris. Our tires were significantly worse, but we had to pit a bit earlier, and we even have a pit stop issue. Oh no, 6-second pit stop. Lando also had a pit stop issue, so we could have technically passed him if we had a great exit. But the gap that we had is now nullified down into 11th, 13th when exiting. Lewis, meanwhile, does overtake someone and now is in 17th. And so, in lap 20, Lewis now enters the pits. Meanwhile, Russell overtakes Oscar Piastri. Lewis also has a pit stop issue, 5.5. I might have overtrained the crew.
Traffic on exit.
2 issues in a row. At least George is now in 5th, but Lewis won't have that luxury, down into 20th again. George Russell, wheel to wheel, battling Checo. He does overtake him. This isn't looking too hopeful for us. We could have been 4th without the pit stop issue. Now we drop down to 6th. At this point, I am just letting the drivers race. There's not much I can do. And so, George enters the pits for the 2nd time in lap 36. Checo in front of him exiting the pits. Meanwhile, George pits, hopefully 2.8. Okay. So, Lando had a lock up, and he kind of messed up his hard tires. Hopefully we'll be able to catch up to Lando and then manage to overtake him. George now on the mediums, racing until the end. We have some extra fuel we could use. We'll see if we can at the end of the race. Now we just have to conserve our tires and catch up to Lando. Albon 2 seconds behind George. Meanwhile, Lewis is 6 seconds behind Albon, but he will soon have to pit for the softs. It has been an uneventful race, but I have just ignored most of the overtakes due to the fact that we kind of messed up our race, and those are close battles, and I guess nothing changed in them. Carlos overtook George after pitting, but he just managed to get back his position, so it's one of the races of all time. Not much we can do here. Not many highlights for us, only lowlights today. 2 pit stops that we messed up for both of the drivers basically at the same time on the same lap. But hopefully Lewis will be able to finish in the points, and hopefully George will be able to race back and get the 6th or 5th position. And so Albon enters the pits, so Lewis will overtake him, but Lewis will pit this lap. So we do have some extra fuel. We will push to increase the gap and hopefully come out in clean air behind Oscar Piastri.
And we can drop the lifter coast for now.
But
We'll pick it up later.
meanwhile, George has closed the gap to Lando a bit. It may not be enough. We will just hold out until the end of the race to see what happens. Lando at 78% with the hards. Again, he had a lockup, so that might be the reason why. And so Lewis enters the pits for the second time. Let's hope for a good pit. Don't want any kind of mistakes. This is crucial for us. Onto the softs. We have a mistake. The front left is locked up. Oh no. 7 seconds
Sorry
now.
about that.
Still can't get it off. 9 seconds. 10 seconds. 12 seconds for Lewis. How do we mess up so
Just be careful
badly?
of traffic pit exit.
Lewis down into 14th, possibly 15th. Trying to race back up with the softs now.
With Lewis Hamilton here. The opportunity's there. And Lewis says, thank you very much.
5 remaining.
And so Lewis overtook Alex Albon. To be fair, Lewis has done the best he could with the things he was given, from multiple pit stop issues to battling from 20th up into 8th. I can only thank Lewis for currently being in the points. Let's hopefully finish on a good note. Meanwhile, George is trying to close the gap to Lando, who is on heavily used hards. He has decreased the gap to 2 seconds. Now, I don't know if that would be enough for the end of the race, or for him to be able to overtake him for the end of the race. But all in all, currently this seems to be a successful weekend from what we were given. And so Lewis will be going for the overtake on Oscar Piastri. He has closed the gap, and so he will try to overtake him. And by the looks of it, it will be successful. We have the inside, and we had DRS. And so Lewis overtakes Oscar Piastri. Lewis has done an amazing job today. I
remaining.
can't believe he's in 7th. To be honest, I was expecting a much worse result, although he is still battling Oscar. And I am pushing with George to try to close the gap to Lando as much as we can. 3 laps to go. He has 44% hards. I don't know if we'll be able to overtake him, but the worst we can do is finish 6th with George, unless if he crashes. But by the looks of it, Lewis has successfully passed Oscar Piastri, and hopefully he will hold that position. George Russell over the line in 6th.
That'll be P6.
We could have done much better.
Let's keep pushing.
I believe easily we could have finished 5th, if not higher. But obviously we had a pit stop issue with George. Norris had a pit stop issue, he even locked up. So for sure, without that pit stop issue, we finished 5th. 6th it is. I am happy about that. Oh no.
And think
Okay,
about
he finishes
lifting coast just a
7th.
little.
Almost stalled in front of the pitch,
We have to
or
check
the
the
finish
flag now.
line. And so we have finished the race. Max finishes 1st and officially has won the Drivers' Championship for the 3rd year in a row. 2021, 22, 23, 24. 4 years in a row. Pardon me. Carlos Sainz finishes 4th. Lando 5th. George Russell, unfortunately, 6th. Lewis made up 11th positions and finishes 7th. Again, as I was saying, a successful race weekend for us. Lando Norris quickly closing in on George Russell, but although they did get the equal amount of points from this race weekend, let's just check in on the rest of the grid. I'm interested to see how the Constructor Championship stands at this time. So, Red Bull still comfortably in 1st. We still have a nice gap to McLaren and even increased the lead by 3 points. Aston Martin are falling off quite heavily, only 1 point from this race weekend. And Pit Stop Championship, today we screwed the pooch. We again dropped down below Aston Martin. I was so happy about our results lately, and now we get 3 pit stop issues. And might have to change up the training schedule for this month. I heavily made them train. And so, in the next episode, we will start a vote on who we sign as our next year's reserve driver. I was thinking about signing a younger driver than Mick. Mick is currently 25, so at least you want to go the 23-year range. Frederick Vesti is my current number one candidate, him being in the Mercedes Academy, and also he is the current reserve driver for Mercedes alongside of Mick. So realistically, we should sign Frederick for next season while we let Mick go. But Theo Pourchaire maybe wants to leave Sauber. We could sign him up. Maybe we go for someone like Felipe Drugovich if he's let go by Aston Martin, but maybe he wants to actually race. Liam Lawson, if he's let go by Red Bull or isn't signed by anybody else, we could sign him. Although, I don't think he really wants to be in the reserve driver for another season. Logan Sargent might be a shout. You know, him not maybe be able to find... he won't be able to find a seat next season in F1. He might want to sign as a reserve driver for us. It's one of the most coveted reserve driver positions in F1 from a Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari. And obviously, as you can see, the current reserve drivers being above 80 overall, or above 79 overall for the top 3 teams. Now, it will be a hard decision. We can even go and sign Nicholas Latifi if we so wish to do so. But it will be an interesting vote. Obviously, this can lead to us signing that reserve driver as a replacement for George or Carlos whenever the time comes. So it is a crucial vote. Like, for example, if we go with Zane Maloney, in 2 years' time, hopefully he grows into an 80 above overall and we can replace Carlos or George with him. If not, we can go and look for another driver to sign down the line. For example, Alex Albon, Oscar Piastri, or whoever it might be. But that will be it for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. In the next 3 episodes, we will finish the season and finally see Lewis leave Mercedes. That will be an interesting event in Abu Dhabi. We might want to do some kind of ceremony for Lewis or whatever. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. I tried to do my best in Austin, but unfortunately we only finished 6th and 7th, I believe, so it is what it is. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you for supporting this series, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.